Are you ready for episode number 28 of Monster Kid Radio? I am, and so is Chris McMillan from the Shadow over Portland. He's joining me, Derek M. Cook, on Monster Kid Radio for part 2 of our discussion of the King of the Monsters, Godzilla. Now, Chris McMillan is the man behind the website The Shadow over Portland, which you can find at shadowoverportland.blogspot.com. It is the Pacific Northwest premier horror news site. If there's something happening horror-related in the Portland, Oregon area, you're going to find out about it over at The Shadow over Portland. There will be a link to The Shadow over Portland over at our website at monsterkidradio.net, along with a link to the band Daikaiju at daikaiju.org. They're the band behind the song we're playing in this episode, Shaka Khan. It's from their album, Daikaiju. It's available on Amazon or, I believe, directly from their website. If you pick up their music, make sure you let them know that Monster Kid Radio sent you. I'm really excited to talk more about Godzilla in this episode of Monster Kid Radio. We're going to talk about a few other Godzilla-related topics like King Kong versus Godzilla and what the kaiju films became and that sort of thing. And again, let me stress, I have seen Pacific Rim since we recorded this episode with Chris. And yes, it is awesome. Stay tuned to the end of the episode where you will hear one final time how you can enter the contest for the Matango Minibust by Monster Kid Tom Biegler. Tom did us a huge solid back when he appeared in episodes 23 and 24 where we talked about the movie Matango, which is an awesome movie. I've said it a couple of times on Facebook and various message boards that Matango has become one of my top new for me movies in 2013. I love this film. It's such a great movie. And Tom is such a great artist. He's got a Matango Minibust that we're giving away to a lucky listener of Monster Kid Radio. Come back at the end of the episode to learn how you can win. The deadline is August 31st, so we're running out of time. Tom also sent us a piece of feedback that we're going to be playing in next week's episodes of Monster Kid Radio. If you'd like to send in some feedback, you can do so by emailing us at monsterkidradio@gmail.com or calling and leaving us a voicemail at 503-4795-MKR. We also are on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page. I appreciate everybody who's given us a like over there. And a Facebook group where you can join any conversation that you see going on over there and take part in some of the polls. I think next month I'm going to be launching a new poll. So if you want to participate in the poll that's running right now, which is, well, me asking you who you want to see on Monster Kid Radio, or specifically here on Monster Kid Radio as a special guest, get over there, join the group, vote in the poll, and stay tuned until next month when I bring a new question to the group. Also want to say big thanks to everybody who's given us reviews in the iTunes store. We just got another one, which is awesome. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Please consider heading over there and dropping us a quick review. All right, we're going to dive right into Godzilla Part 2 with Chris McMillan right after this.
From a world beyond our own come the forces of nature unleashed. Daikaiju Attack, the serialized giant monster story, presented free every week on daikaijuattack.com and sdsullivan.com. Become a member of the Daikaiju Attack group on Facebook. Join the action today.
Do you enjoy movies like Carnival of Souls, The Mole People, Black Sunday, and The Tingler? Do you find yourself late at night reading magazines such as Film Max, Chiller Theater, or Monster Bash? Do you love vintage television programs like Sky King, Outer Limits, and The Time Tunnel? Do you find yourself surfing the net looking for the next Monster Movie Festival or Expo? Do you enjoy hearing anecdotes, cinematic details, and unusual insights into some of your favorite movies? If you answered yes to any of the above, you are encouraged to join your host, Vince Rotolo, as he examines some of the latest horror, sci-fi, and cult theatrical releases, new DVDs to add to your collection, and of course, the old classics, both good and bad. He even interviews people throughout B-Moviedom. So tune into B-Movie Cast at bmoviecast.com.
Godzilla is one of those movies that, even if you haven't seen the movie, I think as a monster kid, as a monster movie fan, you just kind of know what the movie's about. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, shame on you. But
you really should, yes.
You really should. And my own personal experience in Kaiju Land and Godzilla Land, I say shame on you to anybody who's not seen the movie. But as of a couple of years ago, I hadn't seen it.
Oh, really?
I'm actually kind of a late convert to the Kaiju films. For better or worse, when I was growing up, I did not watch a lot of, monster movies, period. I didn't have access to them. And I talked a little bit about this, when we had you on the show for episode 1. Parents weren't really into the horror movies things, didn't want me watching these monster movies. And I discovered these monster movies through the Crestwood House books, those orange-covered hardbacks designed for kids, monster books.
Mm-hmm.
And I read the Godzilla one, and I knew the story of Godzilla and Mothra, and I think Rodan might have been covered and mentioned briefly. But I never saw the movies. So a couple of years ago at the Hollywood Theater, they showed King Kong versus Godzilla. Mm-hmm. Kyle from the Kaiju Cast introduced the movie. I went to go see it. I had never seen it before. Scott Morris, who was a previous guest on the show, was here in town visiting, so we went to go see that together.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I know the movie's goofy and silly, but to see it on the big screen with a group of people, man, it was fantastic, and I was hooked, and that began my journey through the Godzilla filmography, and I've made my way through almost every one of them now. I've tried to watch them in order of release, but I started getting impatient. It's like, okay, I don't want to wait for this one to come from Netflix. I got this one. Let's just move on. So I've been watching as many as I can, and I've kind of dipped into the Gamera films as well a little bit, and I actually have. Is it Gappa? Is that one that was done by a different country? It wasn't Japanese, but anyway, I've got the one coming. I don't know. I've got the one sitting here, and I love these movies. It's so much fun to explore these films now, both as an adult and somebody who's serious about his film studies. But then watching these movies, it kind of reawakens the little kid in me as well. I'm just like, yes, this is so fun and nourishing in a way that.
Oh yeah.
I think only us monster kids get.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I had problems with King Kong versus Godzilla. I mean,
it's a goofy movie.
It's a goofy movie, and they turn Kong from a great character to basically an alcoholic ape that's enslaved an entire island to keep him floating in hard berry cider. Which I'm like, no, that's not King Kong. But, there's something fun about watching two monsters beating each other up, going through buildings. You just kind of sit there and go, oh, yeah, I remember why I liked these movies as a kid.
Oh, man, no. I mean, they changed King Kong quite a bit. And you and I just saw King Kong at the Hollywood. And
oh, yeah.
The original King Kong is a totally different beast. The monster in that is not Godzilla quality like at all. I mean, it's a different quality of film. They did have to make some changes and make some artistic leaps to make Godzilla and King Kong work. I just watched King Kong Escapes on Svengoolie on MeTV a couple of weeks ago, and it's a totally different King Kong. But man, for me, it just awakened a passion for these films in me, and I'm thankful that it did, because I love these films.
They're a lot of fun. I mean, anytime they come up and, on the theater start showing them, I'm definitely going to be there, because there's nothing better, like you said, than watching these on the big screen, because first, it's the way they're supposed to be seen, and everything looks so much cooler.
Yes.
And the other thing is you get a bunch of people who are similarly minded watching this thing, and it's like everybody's cheering and laughing and having a good time. You can't not enjoy that.
Agreed. All right, so as far as the original Godzilla goes, something happened when I first saw it. Okay, I came to the movies late. I knew there was a big franchise. I knew there were Godzilla meets this and that and versus King Kong and whatever. So I knew there were future Godzilla films coming. So I sat down to watch the original Godzilla for the very first time. I knew the basic story, but I didn't know what happens at the end. And big spoiler alert, Godzilla dies.
Oh, yeah.
What? I mean, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe that they had killed Godzilla with the oxygen destroyer. And so my brain starts spinning. Does that mean all the other Godzillas are different Godzillas? Is there a race of Godzillas? Is there more than one? Is there a tribe of Godzillas out there? Where do the Godzillas keep coming from? Is there a generator for Godzillas like in the old Gauntlet video games? I don't, what just happened here? It just blew my mind. I had no idea.
It's kind of like what Universal did, like Frankenstein. The monster dies at the end of Frankenstein, but they find a way to bring him back in Bride, Same thing here. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they hint that there might be more creatures like Godzilla out there, and the nuclear tests may continue to bring them up, at the end of the original Godzilla. So they kind of left themselves an out. Yeah, the next Godzilla film, it was a new Godzilla.
Yeah, it was released here as Gigantus the Fire Monster. Godzilla Raids Again.
Thank you.
Yeah, Godzilla Raids Again was the Japanese title. So as soon as I watched Godzilla and saw Godzilla die, well, then I watched the American version, and then I popped in Godzilla Raids Again. It's like, how do they bring him back? And yeah, they didn't really bring him back. It's just another Godzilla.
Yeah, which is, they hinted at it, like I said, at the end of the first one. So it was kind of like, well, we can bring him back because we said that. We said there may be more, and there is. Well,
and they dove right into production. I mean, this next one came out the very next year, so they were ready to go.
Yeah.
And I guess if you got the suit, might as well keep using it, right?
Why not?
Now, I was going to say, we keep talking about the man in the suit. There's more than just a man in a suit in Godzilla. We've got the hand puppet, and there is one shot of stop-motion animation.
Yeah, there is. Well, there's also the fire truck was stop-motion.
Yeah.
There's a fire engine wreck. I don't think Godzilla... Was there a Godzilla scene that was stop-motion as well?
I thought a tail swiping by might have been stop-motion. Just briefly. It wasn't like a full-on Godzilla. It was just like a tail.
Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, there's a couple scenes in there, and I know that they were talking about doing stop-motion for Godzilla.
Well, the movie was inspired by Harryhausen films, so...
Yeah.
When you see the big monster on the screen in a Harryhausen, they wanted to do something like that, but I don't know if it was just a cost-effective thing or what.
I think it pretty much was, because, I mean, you look at the Harryhausen films, which are beautiful, but they're not, they're not really knocking over a whole lot of buildings. Look at how long it took him to animate Washington, D.C. falling apart in Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and you can understand why they went with a guy in a monster suit, because I don't think they could have done a stop-motion version of Godzilla. It would have been extremely expensive.
Right. And I actually prefer Godzilla as a man in a suit, which is one of the issues I had with the film that we're not going to mention. I really prefer Godzilla as a man in a suit. I'm curious as to how it's going to turn out in 2014, because, it's going to be a lot of CG.
Yeah, but they did release... I don't know if you've gone online, but they did release, apparently, whether you believe online or sources or not, they did release a small picture of what Godzilla is going to look like, a small model. And it looks like Godzilla.
Good.
Yes. That was one of my problems with the movie that shall not be named. It didn't look like Godzilla.
No.
I know they were trying to make it scientific and, more believable to the audience. You've got a giant monster stomping through cities. Believability kind of goes out the window a little bit.
Right, exactly.
We can handle not having a definite cause. Just show us a monster.
Give us a monster in a suit or whatever. Unfortunately, when I see or even think about the movie that shall not be named, I don't think about Godzilla. I think to the Taco Bell commercials with the little talking chihuahua. Here, lizard, lizard, lizard. That's where my brain goes now. I've been able to compartmentalize that away from the greater kaiju canon and turn it into a marketing thing. So, which may have been the problem with the film in the first place, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I will say this for the new Godzilla: if they do it half as well as Del Toro did it in Pacific Rim, it will look amazing.
Excellent. Well, I'm hopeful. I have very high hopes. I'm not dreading it.
I think they're trying to do it wouldn't be hard to do a better job than the first American remake. So I'm hoping they get it right.
Yeah. Now, when you had mentioned doing Godzilla for Monster Kid Radio to talk about it, I had asked you, is this a movie that you've got a lot of experience with? And you told me that you had seen it as a kid growing up.
As I was saying when I was, on the show first time, we didn't get a whole lot of stuff up here in the Portland, Vancouver area. But when I was in California, they showed that one. They would show War of the Gargantuans. They showed a lot of the kaiju movies down there. And so I got to see the original Godzilla. I got to see Monster X. I got to see Mothra and all those. They were great. You know, watching all these films, I was so used to Godzilla being, you know, kind of goofy because, you know, the like the later ones got. So to hear that, you know, the original one was, you know, such an allegory to nuclear war and all that, you're just kind of going, really? You know? And then to come across the original and go, wow, they really tried to make a good movie out of this. It was a pleasant surprise. You know, It doesn't take away from what the series became, because those are great fun, but taking, you know, my childhood memories of how much fun I had watching these movies, and then to watch the Japanese version of Godzilla and be really terrified by watching him destroy Tokyo was really a different experience. You know, even though he's not doing anything out of malice, he's still doing some nasty things.
I'm trying to imagine watching, you know, to having that experience, because I hadn't watched these movies growing up, so I would imagine that if I had, I would have seen the Raymond Burr version. I would have seen the Americanized version. So I'm trying to imagine what that would have done to me, you know, as a younger person watching, you know, Raymond Burr, Steve Martin, you know, reporting on Godzilla, and then seeing the original Japanese edition with no Raymond Burr, no American, you know, spoon-feeding a simpler story to us and more of this bleakness. I mean, there's even something about the quality of the film, and I know this wasn't something they did on purpose, and I don't know if maybe I'm just reading into it, but if you watch the Japanese edition of the film versus the American version, I feel like the Japanese version of the movie, even the cinematography is more sharp and dark and despairing. And I don't know if it's, I don't know why. I know they didn't go through and reshoot and change the lighting or whatever, but it just overall has a different feel.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything is dark in that movie. You know, everything just has this weighted feeling on you, you know. It's just despairing. You get an atmosphere of despair through the whole thing. I don't know what they did to change it. Maybe they just, you know, I don't think they reshot the film, but maybe they treated it different or something to brighten it up. But the Japanese versions feels different.
Yeah, I don't think they even did anything. I mean, if I think I did a screen-by-screen comparison, they probably didn't do anything at all. It's just the overall effect of the movie being a different kind of movie, having that kind of impression. I mean, the movie itself is dark. It's black and white. It's stark in spots, as it should be. It's nice and dark and creepy and scary. It's a flat-out monster movie in the mold of some of the original Universal films in terms of its cinematography. It brings something to the table that I wasn't expecting when I sat down to watch it.
Like I said, when I saw it finally, you know, the original, I was just like, wow, this is totally different. It was an interesting thing to see how the series changed from that very first movie. You know, because that first movie is a perfect standalone. You don't need another Godzilla movie after that.
Oh, no, not at all.
The world's better having more Godzilla movies.
Oh, definitely.
But, yeah, I was like, what? But, you know, you don't need it. That movie is its own little thing. And I'm sure once it was a big hit, you know, that's why they flew into production on that second one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And
I don't think they were really aiming for it.
Right.
I don't think they were aiming for a sequel.
No, I can't imagine that was the intention from the beginning. I'm sure as they were going along and they started getting some feedback or whatever, because it was a man in a suit, it's easier to, I mean, you've got to make some models, but it's easier to go ahead and move into production because you don't have to spend 10 months doing the stop motion animation or whatever. So, I mean, thankfully there's that as well. And it's a whole art. I mean, the whole man in suit art is just fascinating. And, I mean, this is a tradition that goes back to very early Hollywood, putting people in ape suits and things like that. So, you know, the kaiju films just take it to another level, and it's phenomenal. And the original Japanese, we mentioned this briefly before, it is so depressing in spots. You've got the mother and the two kids. They know they are about to die. We will be with your father soon, which, oh, man, that's a Godzilla-sized gut punch. I mean, that's emotionally wrecking. And then, even though that happens, once we get to the end of the movie, there is so much reverence shown to Godzilla, this animal, doing what animals do as they destroy it, as it dies. It's kind of sad, you know? And then, of course, Serizawa sacrifices himself as well.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, I mean, it's not the kind of moment that you get with an American monster movie where, good triumphs and yay, the villagers can go home because they've burned the castle to the ground and yay, it's not that. It's a sad, somber burial at sea moment, which they get a little bit of in the American version, not so much, but in the Japanese, I mean, it's moving and touching, and I felt bad for Serizawa and Godzilla.
The interesting thing is I felt bad for Godzilla in the American version. But when I'm watching the Japanese one, even though I know he's not doing anything, he's not just going up and going, I'm just going to stomp this place because I want to. He's just doing what he does. My sympathy for Godzilla is, I find in the Japanese version, I find it a little lacking.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the reverent tone, but I don't have the same sympathy. And I think it's because of those gut punches we keep talking about. The mother and her kids in the hospital during the aftermath. There's a little girl who loses her mom, and as they're carrying the mother away, this kid is just screaming and crying, and they hold on that shot for so long. It rips you apart, and it was scenes like that just took away any sort of empathy I might have had for Godzilla at that point. It's like I felt like the scientist who wanted to study Godzilla, as he's watching this creature destroy everything and go, we can't keep it alive. My empathy for the creature was severely lessened. I didn't feel as sad. But like I said, that's because that version really, really hammered home that, he's killing a lot of people. He's true. A monster.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, the Frankenstein monster who's trying to find his place in the world. This thing's just taking over the world. Not out of malice, but just because it is. Just because it can. I don't have the sympathy as Godzilla's dying. It's kind of like, well, it had to happen.
That's true. I'm not saying they should have kept it alive, but no, I see where you're coming from. I think, though, we both recognize that kind of reverent tone. The music swells, and everybody's just kind of watching, like, what did we just do? This kind of moment. And, I mentioned the music. I've got to mention the music, because I'm a film score guy. People know I collect film scores. And I do have the music from Godzilla on my iPod. It is such great music by Akira Ufukube. I think I got the name pronounced right. It's iconic music. I mean, you hear it now in commercials. And I mean, there's even a professional wrestler who uses a version of it for his entrance music. I mean, it is iconic music. So I got to mention that.
Yes, and it's like the Godzilla roar. You hear that music, you know exactly what it is. There's no mistaking that. That's Godzilla. That score just really amplifies. It was perfect. It was perfect. It gave the feeling of Godzilla's size and it gave the monster gravity. How do you say it?
No, I think you nailed it. It gave him gravity. That's a great way to put it, man.
Yeah. It made this is a big frickin' thing.
Yeah. Some of the other things that work in the movie, just kind of briefly to touch on it, we talked about the acting a little bit. The direction's fantastic, the music. There's a number of special effects shots and a lot of special effects happening in the movie that don't involve a man in a suit. There's a ton of match shots in here. There's some great camera tricks in here. So it's not just a gimmicky man in the suit movie. If you go when I saw this for the first time, it was the Criterion Blu-ray release that came out last year. And there's some great behind-the-scenes special features on the disc that talk about some of the match shots they did and some of the paintings they did and some of the camera work they did here and there and the models and all that. There's a lot of care and craft that went into this film.
You can see that.
Definitely. And I would recommend that Criterion release. It's got both versions of the film. They both look gorgeous, and they have a brand new commentary track on them by David Callett, who wrote the book A Critical History and Filmography of Toho's Godzilla series. And what's interesting about that commentary track is if you watch the original Godzilla with the commentary track, he goes through the movie, and then at the very end he's like, and I invite you to join me for Godzilla King of the Monsters, and you start that one and it just continues.
Wow, interesting.
So it's kind of a 2-part, and it's a fun way to spend 4 hours of your afternoon. So.
No, I have the version that came up before Criterion got a hold of it. It was both discs, and the same person does the commentary on track on that version as well. I'm trying to remember whose version it was. I just don't right now, and I don't have it on me. But he does a commentary track on that. Even though I have the one version of it, I'm thinking about getting the Criterion version.
Well, if you're an obsessive fan, and I don't know anybody quite like that at all. No. I've picked up both, but I'd recommend the Criterion release because it's gorgeous. It looks good. So,
mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what else is there to say about Godzilla? I think we kind of talked about all the good things about it and why people need to have it and watch it and love it. And respect
definitely.
it, and what it means to us really as monster kids. My development as a monster kid is ongoing, and having Godzilla in my life now, have you found Godzilla? I mean, that's really the question I'm asking right now. Do you have Godzilla in your life?
Those movies are so much fun, and I've seen versions from. I know they categorize them into 3 different series,
right?
And I have not seen them all. I don't know if I will ever get to seeing them all, but man, if I come across one and it's on, I will definitely sit down and watch it. Or if I find one, somewhere in a used store, I'm going to grab it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, and it's unfortunate because some of them are not available easily here in the States.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you can get them in Japan, but they're not either dubbed or subtitled or whatever, so it's really tough. Granted, I don't know how much dubbing you need for some of the later movies where they're just breaking stuff,
mm-hmm.
but I would like to know how the Japanese version of King Kong versus Godzilla plays out. No, I know it's not that Godzilla wins over King Kong. That's just an urban legend, but they had to Americanize that release for us here in the States a little bit by putting all the stuff in with the news station and all that.
Oh,
the news satellite. They put the music from Creature from the Black Lagoon over that film in some spots, which I loved.
I was laughing so hard. I'm like, oh my God, no! They took the Creature theme.
Yeah.
You see that, and familiarity of the music aside, but the Creature sting, it's too light. Once again, it's a gravity thing. It doesn't give the impression of big monsters. It just kind of makes it sort of lightweight, if that makes any sense.
Now, I know that Creature from the Black Lagoon is your number 1 monster movie, so I know there's no disrespect here, but...
No.
I'm going to agree with you here, because as much as I love that music and I love that movie, I think if you take the music away from the film, you're right, it is kind of a singular kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guy. It's a humanoid-sized guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas the Godzilla music is a completely different beast.
Yeah.
It's a completely different beast. It's a completely different thing.
Sure, both of them are guys in rubber suits, but there's a difference.
Right.
You can't use one with the other. And no, there is no disrespect for the Creature.
No,
that sting is my ringtone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, whenever someone calls, it's to the Creature.
Nice.
So yeah, but like I said, I mean, you hear that music and putting aside all familiarity and going, that's Creature from Black Lagoon, it just doesn't give enough of an impression of size and weight.
Yeah.
To a giant monster.
Yes.
But I guess they had I guess Universal released it, they had it, and they just figured, hey, we'll throw this in.
Right, exactly. Which, you do what you got to do. But I would love to see some of these Japanese versions of some of these films, just to know what the difference are,
If I could get my hands on the Japanese version of King Kong versus Godzilla, oh yeah, I would get it.
Yeah.
Because you just got to know. I mean, that it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But how, that would be the interesting thing. I know the whole scene on the island pretty much will play out the same way, but it's also sometimes the dubbing, they don't get the words right, or they create their own story through the dubbing. Yeah, I would like to see it. I'd love to see it.
Well, there's the story, too, about Godzilla-related again, where George Takei is dubbing one of the voices for the American release of that film, and the whole banana oil story behind that, where, they wanted to try to come up with a word that matched the mouth movement, and the only thing they could come up with was banana oil as like some sort of curse or swear. Like,
really?
Yeah.
See, I have not seen Godzilla-related again yet.
Oh, it's different because in Godzilla, he's a big man in the suit, but he's moving slow, and there's a gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And Godzilla raids again. I mean, this is the first time you have two monsters going at each other, and Godzilla raids again. It's sped up. I mean, it is super fast. It's like they're having a slap fight. It's just this hyperkinetic kind of... I don't think they overcrank or undercrank the camera or anything like that. It's just the movement's different.
Right.
Which felt a little incongruous to big, hefty, gravity-wielding Godzilla, you know?
Yeah, well, he seemed to get lighter on his feet as things went on, to the point where he's doing a jig or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in later films especially.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to bring that up, but, you know.
Well, no, you know what happens.
There's that image scarred in my mind of Godzilla hopping on one foot and then the other. It's like, oh, no.
Well, hey, you know, the last Godzilla film that I watched was the Godzilla versus Megalon film. So, you know, if... which I expected to end with Godzilla and the giant robot high-fiving each other at the end, you know, so... It does get a little silly and goofy at spots, but it is what it is. We love it now.
Oh yeah, you know, like I said, I mean, you kind of have to laugh at some of it, but still, if it's out there, you're gonna watch it because you love it. You know, big monsters going through buildings, knocking each other over. How can you not want to see that? Exactly.
Well, Chris, man, I want to thank you for spending your morning with us talking about Godzilla here on Monster Kid Radio.
Oh, it's my pleasure. What better way to spend a Saturday morning?
I know, right?
Other than watching the movie, what better way to spend a Saturday morning than talking about them?
And I think after I get done recording this, I'm going to go pour myself a cup of coffee and go pop one in because I'm in the mood now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to as well.
There you go. So how do people find you online? Where's your website?
The Shadow Over Portland. You can Google it. It usually comes up first, or just go to Shadow Over Portland at blogspot.com.
And there will be a link in the show notes to that. Chris is the premier source of all horror happenings here in the Pacific Northwest. I learn about things from his website, and I consider myself pretty keyed into what's going on, but Chris fills in the blanks for me just fine. So go check out his website if you want to know what's going on up here.
Thanks a lot for the plug. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. We'll have you back on the show again sometime.
Okay, sounds great.
I like having Chris on the show. I think we'll have him back on again sometime. Maybe later this year if we can make the schedules work. And that brings me to something I wanted to bring to the Monster Kid Radio listeners. Do you want to be on the show? Do you have something that you want to hear us talk about? Drop me a line, monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or call us at our voicemail line, 503-479-5MKR, and let me know. All right, I told you, this is the last time I'm going to mention how you can enter the Matango Minibust contest before we announce the winner next month. Monster Kid, friend of mine, sculptor, artist, and incredibly humble human being, Tom Biegler, created the Matango Minibust, one-of-a-kind piece of artwork to celebrate the movie Matango, which we talked about here on the show a couple of weeks ago. Head over to monsterkidradio.net to look in the archives and to check out a picture of the Minibust yourself. This is up for grabs. We're going to have a drawing next month and give that away to one lucky listener of Monster Kid Radio. To enter, you need to email me your name, your mailing address, and then make up the name of another vegetable movie, a killer vegetable movie. Mushrooms are pretty freaking evil. I mean, they're at the top of the evil food chain as far as I'm concerned. I just don't like the slimy little things. But there are other vegetables that I'm sure could be twisted and turned into monster movie fodder. So email me the name of your movie, maybe give me a line or two about what it's about. I'll throw you in the drawing, and you might win the Matango Minibust. We've talked to Tom about maybe doing another Minibust contest down the line once he and I do another show together, which we will be doing here soon. There are lots of plans in the works. You're also going to hear from Tom next week when we play some feedback that we got from him. Speaking of feedback, I want to go ahead and respond to something that was said to me on Facebook. This was last week from listener Mike. He says, I just discovered your new show and I'm really enjoying it. Have you considered covering Curse of the Swamp Creature with one of your favorite actors, John Agar? I think it'd make a fun episode. Anyway, keep recording and we'll keep listening. Thank you for the kind thoughts about the show. I really appreciate it. I love doing the show. It's a blast for me. I'm having so much fun doing this. And I could talk about John Agar for days. And in fact, I have talked about Curse of the Swamp Creature, but not here on Monster Kid Radio. I talked about it back in episode 190 of the B Movie Cast. Vince and Mary and Nick and Juan, everybody over at the B Movie Cast, definite friends of ours over here at Monster Kid Radio. And back in February, they had me on the show to talk about Curse of the Swamp Creature. There will be a link in the show notes to this episode, or you could just head on over to bmoviecast.com and search for Curse of the Swamp Creature. Like I said, it was episode 190. They're also in the iTunes store, so you can find them there as well. But you know what? I don't mind talking about this movie again, so, maybe down the line we'll give it the proper Monster Kid Radio treatment. But in the meantime, the B-Movie Cast did a bang-up job. We'll come back next week with a couple of other episodes, I think. Well, you know what? I'm going to keep you in suspense. I think I know what I want to do next week, but it's a surprise. It's a secret. And if everything goes well, it'll be something that has never been done on the Monster Kid Radio podcast before. So come back next week for that. Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivations 3.0 Unported license. Of course, that does not apply to the song Sharka Khan, which is property of the band Daikaiju. It appears on this episode of Monster Kid Radio by permission of the band. You can get it for yourself if you pick up the album Daikaiju. Talk to you next week.